Okay, a longer delay. Okay, we are officially live. Hello and welcome and happy Wednesday to everyone who is tuning in. And of course, to those of you who will be listening to this on the podcast, welcome. I am your host, Sabine Gideon, and I'm excited to be here with you today to have this conversation with Phyllis, another female powerhouse in the leadership space. And so, real quick, if you are completely new to me, new to the show, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your listenership. And for those of you who are returning, thank you. I appreciate you. We actually just hit 5,000 downloads yesterday. So thank you to everyone who has been on the show, who has listened, who has rated, who has subscribed. I sincerely appreciate you. And it just gives me one more thing to be grateful for this week, which is also Thanksgiving week at the time of the recording. So with that, I will introduce my amazing guest here and then have her tell you a little bit about herself. So with more than 30 years of corporate leadership experience, Phyllis Sarkaria is a master certified executive coach, facilitator, and trusted advisor. Phyllis is the author of Courageous Clarity, Navigating the Way Forward on Your Leadership Journey, the essential guide for leaders who want to inspire, influence, and engage their teams for greater results. With that, welcome to the show, Phyllis.
It is such a pleasure to be back talking with you, Sabine, and supporting the amazing things that you are doing forward with women.
Oh, awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. So, for those of you who are completely new, Phyllis was on the Lead Her Ship Reloaded series. And so we will talk through a little bit about what's changed or what's evolved from last year to this year. But before we get into that, Phyllis, just share with us some high level career milestones that you've experienced or, pivotal moments in your career that, have allowed you to transition into the space of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's actually my career journey's been kind of interesting because I started in finance and strategic planning, but I had the opportunity to move into HR about 20 years ago and eventually moved into an HR executive role. And I found my passion there. And I love the opportunity to work with people to achieve amazing things. And when we do the right things by and with people, what we can achieve. And so I loved working in the corporate space. And as you said, I spent about 30 years in corporate America. And 6 or 7 years ago, it's like time has flown. But I decided to go out on my own. It was a good point to make a transition. And I was actually thinking about looking for another small company to be part of the growth story again. But as I started doing some consulting, I realized I was enjoying the variety of work, the just the different people that I was working with, and began to focus more on that. Decided to take a shot at building my own business, and that evolved because of client request into doing more coaching. And related to that, about we're coming up on 2 years next February. I published a book. My COVID journey was to have absolutely every contract canceled for a 2 or 3 month period. I was like, oh my gosh, have I have I suddenly retired and I didn't mean to? But then I got very busy. But during that 2 to 3 month lull, my husband said, well, you've always said that if you had time, you would write a book, and maybe now you have time. And so I started sketching it out, published it in February of 22, and that's kind of taken off in doing more coaching, more speaking, and just interacting with some fascinating leaders.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us a little bit about the book.
So Courageous Clarity is based around what I call leadership GPS. And if you think about the GPS you have on your phone or in your car, kind of shows you where you are. It gives you at least one way to get where you want to go. And then if you get lost or you change direction, it recalculates. And leadership GPS is similar to that, starting with where are you? What is the impact you have on other people? What self-awareness, similar to some themes that you touch on frequently, what is that self-awareness that can make us more effective as leaders and help our careers to grow? And then once you have a greater sense of who you are and the impact that you have on other people, then opportunities around entering into productive dialogue and collaboration to really achieve amazing results and get where you want to go. And finally, recognizing that if you aren't clear on your priorities, or let's face it, there are inevitable detours and roadblocks that fall into pretty much any career journey. And so, some thinking around ways to address that when that happens.
I love that. And I love the fact that the focus is really around this GPS. There's been a couple of things circulating, and every now and then, if I see something like 2 or 3 times, I just know that this is like my sign that, it's opportunity for clarity. And so I've seen within the last couple of weeks this clip of Oprah talking about, the reason why, or they asked her something about, what advice would she give to someone who's looking to, create success. And, she's just like, first of all, you have to just figure out where you want to go. Most people don't create success, which everyone defines success differently. So whatever success is defined for you, once you know where you want to go and you just start moving towards and taking action, like, you will be successful. It's the piece in between of the consistency, the clarity, the resources that catch people up. And I want to say I saw Mel Robbins talk about something very similar, that the start of anything, the start of any goal, the start of any achievement starts with, where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? And along with that too, the other piece that I always add to, well, before you figure out where you want to go, let's get to who are you? Is where you want to go aligned with who you are? Because if it's not, then inevitably you will get stopped at some point along the way, good or bad. But I love that the focus is really on the GPS, building that self-awareness, figuring out where you want to go, and then building the plan and that clarity of the plan to get there. So with that, we talked a year ago. Things were cray, to say the least. Things are still cray now, but in different ways, in different capacities. And we were talking about in the green room that, while last year the conversation was really around, we need to recognize the work of women who have been pioneering, women who have been leading, and women who have really been holding down the fort. This year, I feel like we saw the opposite, where it was the year of the woman. Now, granted, there were some obstacles that came against women this year, but we can still look back, especially at the time of this recording, and look and see the strides that women have made. So I'm curious, on your end, what have you seen differently a year later? What are your thoughts on, the progress that we've made and where we may still have some opportunities?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? Because, I agree with you that we absolutely have seen progress this year, and, women are continuing to make strides. Let's face it, we've got a lot of, gutsy broads out there that are just fighting to get things done, move things forward, make a difference in this world. And it's not easy. There are always going to be obstacles that come up, but it's that perseverance, it's that focus on understanding what your goal is that can help you figure out, do I work around this obstacle? Do I change direction? Do I take the detour? Whatever analogy you want to use. And it was funny, you mentioned when we were in the green room, you mentioned you have not seen the Barbie movie. And I know some people think that movie's amazing. Other people, hate it. And a lot of people kind of in between. But one of the things that I felt that I took away very strongly from that movie, because I have seen it, was this idea of kind of, I don't know who I am, but I want to figure out who I am, because once you have a greater sense of who you are, it's easier to understand what your potential is, where you're going to go. So many of us, I don't know, it's like we listen to everyone else's input on, you should be this or you should do that. Or in many cases, you shouldn't do that or can't do that, rather than really understanding what our true talents are and and what energizes, what motivates us, because you may be capable of doing things, but if they don't energize you, then it's going to be hard to show up when you do run into those inevitable challenges.
Yeah, I agree. And I there's a little bit of delay on my end. Am I good video
you
wise for you?
you are good.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Were
I
you
was
done? I
just
didn't
gonna
mean to cut you off. I didn't know if you were
no,
still going.
the other thing I was gonna say is, in terms of kind of where things may be going, um, I would anticipate there are still opportunities for women to do so much more and to step up and lead. And I love the fact that in my family, education was always highly emphasized, very important to success, and both professional and life success. And I love the fact that more and more women are pursuing not just college degrees, but advanced education in order to improve their personal situations, their family situations, and make the world a better place. And women set such an example for their children as well. So I think we'll start to see in successive generations that this kind of growth and focus will continue. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the momentum is still there. I did sense, if you will, towards the latter part of 2022, when things started to go back to normal, that the momentum was starting to die off. And then, the women said, no, it's not dying off. And I just see more and more voices being raised, and more individuals with influence or individuals with platforms. I was talking to, and I'll go back to this thought, but I was talking to someone last week, and we were talking about, leadership, women in leadership at organizations, especially at the high level. And we know there's like 52 or 53 women running these Fortune 500 companies. And of course, there are, women in between. There are women who are running like smaller organizations and whatnot. And, I'm of the mindset now that it's not necessarily about creating programs to our mentorship programs. I mean, by that, or leadership skill training. Yeah, I think those things are important so that women can climb, if you will. It's about how do we encourage, motivate, reward more women who are at the top to let that ladder back down.
Yes.
Because I think that's the missing piece. And I'm not saying that, no one, that women get to the top and they don't let the ladder back down. That's not what I'm saying. But I think the approach that we've taken, especially in organizations where it's just like, oh, just give them more training, just give them more mentors, right? And we know that it's really sponsorship. It's really having someone at the top who will speak their names into the in rooms, right? Who will recommend them for opportunities. So how do we create more ways for not only for the women who are at the top to be supported, but that they also feel like there's an incentive to an extent to let that ladder back down and allow those who are, looking to climb the ladder specifically to be able to climb up.
Well, and Sabine, it actually makes me kind of sad that when you say that, I think back to the dark ages when I started my career in the mid 80s. And one of the big discussions that I often had with friends, we're early in our career. We would look at the very few women who were higher up, and we felt like they never help us out. And so this feeling of you're going to have to either mentor yourself or find other mentors and sponsors, but the people who you would think would help you because they know what the fight has been like, once they get up there, they, whether intentionally or not, the ladder sort of gets drawn up. And so it makes me sad to hear that, whenever I hear comments that those who are at the top maybe are not actively engaging, because let's face it, the good old boy network is still alive and well. And so how do we create a good old girl network that fosters and encourages these bright, talented young women, and even some that aren't that young, who have a lot to give. I loved the ideas that you mentioned in your book, Leadership Reloaded, around mentorship and sponsorship. And as I was reading it, it made me reflect on the fact that when I think about the people who truly were invaluable mentors and sponsors and those who advanced my career, um, they didn't look like me. They weren't. I mean, I don't think, with the exception of one kind of later in my career, amazing woman that I worked for, an amazing CEO, most of the people who helped me to grow and nurture and helped to create opportunities for me, they were all men. And being open to being mentored and sponsored by those who are different from us is also very important, and understanding how to develop those relationships professionally. So what have you found works
Yeah.
best? I mean, you
That's
talk to so many great people. What do you find that is
it's
really resonating with people or with women?
yeah. Yeah, great question. And so I'm actually working on another series, and it's focused on women in power and really mending our relationship with power, or helping to debunk some of the myths that exist around women being powerful and owning power. We hear so much about, empowerment, right? Empowerment is always the word that is attached to women. And while I think it has its place, I also feel like there's this hint or this undertone of you're being given it, right? Versus power, it's something that you are tapping within yourself and you are projecting into your environments. So long story short, as I've been talking to these women, many of them, similar to you, their pathway has been they had male counterparts or male allies or senior leadership in that were male who said, "Hey, let me help you out." And so it's unfortunate that that is the case, but the beauty of that, and I'm sure this is similar to you, is because that was their experience and they recognize the absence of having other, women role models, they are very proactive in putting that ladder back down and saying, "Hey sis, like come on up," or "Here's how you navigate it." So I think, while there may be pockets where that ladder is it's a little hard to climb, I do think that the people who had to struggle, or maybe not had to struggle, but who had support that didn't look like them, to your point, that they are very proactive in putting that ladder back down. It's a matter of I guess it's two things. And I was actually just talking to a client about this yesterday. We as women, we have got to get past the notion and the mindset that our value is tied to what we do and not who we are. And the reason why I say that is, so many women, like, they will do all of the things. They will take on all of the assignments. They will take on all the work. They will take on all the things. And then when it comes time to networking, when it comes time to building relationships, when it comes time to stepping outside of their comfort zones, to be in spaces that they don't necessarily feel comfortable, or they don't necessarily think that they can add value, so to speak, they avoid those spaces. And it's counterintuitive, but that's actually what you need to be focusing your time on, because hard work only gets you more hard work. So I think it's what I'm seeing is there needs to be more, maybe education, or more of a broader understanding of what is networking, what is the purpose of it,
Mhm.
right? What does that look like for us that makes us feel good and comfortable? Because, I'm not going to generalize women here, but, getting to a place where we understand that it's okay to step outside of that comfort zone, build relationships with people, make it be part of your job, maybe make it be part of your work. I mean, you and I know as entrepreneurs, right? Like that is part of the job. Like we wouldn't be able to maintain our businesses if we weren't building relationships. And so I'm a big proponent of trying to break down, or trying to separate that old school mindset of what networking was to no, we're building relationships, and this is the value that building relationships can have. And then also, allowing them to see that as you build relationships, it may not be people who look like you. It may not be people who, you have anything in common with. That's what I was talking to my client with yesterday. They don't have to be your best friends. They don't have to be, your buddies that you go to anything, but are they influential? Do they have access? Have you observed their behavior in being able to open doors for other people? Those are the ones that you want to align with and connect with, to get support and of course, add value to their life as well.
Well, exactly, because I love how you phrase that, because it's that finding that right balance of self-promotion, self-advocacy, that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. And thinking about it more in terms of, this is an investment in my career. And I think about not just in my current role and the importance of networking, but when I was an HR executive, and even then backing up even prior to HR, I worked for about 10 years as a regulatory lobbyist. And so a lot of the responsibility I had was to get out, to interact with people, to develop relationships with people who maybe didn't like me, didn't like the things I was supporting, that sort of thing, but to get to know them and understand what they really cared about. And if you want to do that well, because we're talking there about power in the form of influence. And if you want to do that well, you have to be incredibly curious. And when I first started in that role, um, I I felt like it's that sort of, when you've done well in school, you always feel like you have to have the answer. It's like I did all my research and I'm going to be very persuasive. And so I felt like I had to know what was going on, and I wasn't doing the simple thing of just asking people. It's like I would try to figure out what do they care about, rather than just getting to know them and asking questions and being more curious and learning that way about them.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to do the latter than to try to guess, and then, oh, that wasn't quite right, and how do I refine my guess in my research?
I agree. I'm curious because there's this notion out there that, when it comes to men getting opportunities versus women getting opportunities, that women are evaluated on their performance versus men being evaluated on their potential. And so, when it comes to funding, when it comes to promotions, you name it, whatever space that you're in, that is the bias that exists out there, that men, it's about their potential, women, it's about their performance. And I wonder how much of that, like, we've really bought into, or how much of that exists because that's what society, that's how society is made up, and how much of that is that's what we've bought into.
Oh, wow. Great way of thinking about that. I mean, definitely, as you describe it, it's a bias that exists. And I think it probably also exists. I'm just guessing for um, male immigrants and people of color, and so those who are not quote unquote those in power. Um, what I wonder though is how we can shift both our thinking and the reality of that, because I do think relationships and familiarity, and if you think about it, you're willing to take a chance on, you're willing to trust someone you've gotten to know, as opposed to someone who maybe has an amazing reputation, but you really don't know them. And so I think there are certain levels of influence that we can begin to exercise when we really work on the relationship around not just proving ourselves. So proving, with strong performance, that is important, but also expressing interest. It's like, what are your dreams? Have you ever talked to anyone about that? I know a couple of opportunities I had professionally, they came about because I had had conversations with people, with some of these folks that I saw as sponsors and mentors, and as we developed great working relationships, I had expressed to them, I really have an interest in doing this. Oh, a dream job would be that, and so that planted the seed. And I remember actually a former boyfriend saying to me, wow, you're just so lucky, it's like you're in the right place at the right time. And I'm thinking, do you know how hard I worked to get myself in that place, so when the opportunity came along, I was ready. And that really does matter. It's that preparation, that networking that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you shared that example. It's funny, just going back to something that you said, that triggered a thought for me when you said, it's not only just women, but minorities, immigrants, and whatnot. And it just sparked for me, like I'm an immigrant, and so my messaging very early on from my parents were, you got to work hard, you got to work hard, you got to work hard. And that was the messaging, obviously, coming into a new country, like that's what they know, right? So they taught me that. But I wonder if I wasn't, if would I have that same mindset if I wasn't, an immigrant, and that's what my parents believed was the pathway to success? What if it was, what, show up, do your best, and do your best? Would I still be who I am today? Would I still be in the positions, or would I've had the pathway that I had today if that messaging, those earlier childhood messages, were different?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, so in my own case, my father, I mean, visually, I'm white. I'm in a position of privilege, and I recognize the opportunities I've gotten because of that. And at the same time, I grew up in a family where my father wasn't able to finish college because of money issues. My grandfather actually only had an eighth grade education. And my father prioritized education for my brothers and I. And he really preached this, don't just work hard, but you're going to have to work harder than everyone else. You're going to have to really, put in more effort if you want to be recognized. And don't think that, I mean, there was definitely the work hard message, but it was, you got to focus not just on efforts, but on results, and what results are going to matter, and figure out what results are really going to make a difference. Because when you're solving the right problems, that's when you're going to get noticed.
Mm.
And that's a message that my husband's father was also an immigrant, and there was a consistent message like that in his family. So I do think maybe there's some of that mindset around, rather than just kind of work hard, do your best. It's that drive to prove yourself. It's like you feel like you really have to do something more, and it does get you
Yeah.
noticed.
Yeah. I wonder if we have an opportunity here, especially for the next generation, that we start to shift that messaging. I mean, they may have already, the damage may have already been done by their parents and their caretakers, but how can we shift that message that, your output is great, right? That's great, but who you are is even better.
Yeah.
That we flip it, where the reward, if you will, comes from how are you showing up as a human being versus what's the performance, what's the output. Because years of self-coaching and therapy, I've needed to kind of let go of that separation. Well, Phyllis, as we're moving into the blitz section, so I know you are working on the next variation, the next project of your book here. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. It's actually, I'm really excited about it because it's come out of several years of actually working the olive harvest, for friends who have an olive grove, and in conversations recognizing that there are actually a lot of things we can learn about leadership from the harvest. And so I'm thinking about kind of in the form of a fable. The burned out executive, that would be me, who heads off for a relaxing vacation and gets roped into doing all this physical labor at a harvest, but recognizing through that and through conversations with wise elders that understanding your priorities, understanding the impact that you have on other people, um, how how it actually can benefit you to slow down in order to go faster, and being open to fresh perspectives and different ways of looking at things. All of those things can lead to greater success. They can make you a better leader. They can make you a better team member who has, gets recognized for leadership potential. So that's where the outline is. More to come.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Well, we'll definitely put your first book in the show notes. But Phyllis, before I go back or before I wrap up with the Blitz section here, so we started off talking about the your first book with regards to the GPS, getting clear on what you want, what the vision is. Then we discussed kind of like where we see the momentum for women in really advancing, letting down the ladder, and of course, seeking out sponsorships, seeking out support. As we think about, where we are, the state of the union this year, and all the chaos that may not necessarily be happening at home, though there is chaos at home, as in the United States. But overall, there's just the world is needing a little love and is needing a little compassion and is needing a lot of grace right now. So as you think about, and especially, given the time of week that we're in right now, as you think about what advice you would give to leaders who are really still at the place where everything feels so outside of their control. I really do have a heart for people in leadership, sitting in leadership roles in organizations, because I know it's not a tough job. It may seem glamorous. I shouldn't say it's not a tough job. I know it's not an easy job is what I meant to say. It may seem glamorous, but the weight just keeps getting added on and added on and added on. So what encouragement or what thoughts do you have, or what have you shared with your clients to help in supporting them, staying grounded during this time, staying focused, having that GPS, that where are we headed, kind of at the forefront of their North Star?
Wow. Well, life's always going to be complicated, right? So it's how do you embrace the joy and the gratitude for where we are now? And I have actually had fairly recently client conversations around focus on what you can control. There is a tendency to, it's like we're thinking big because we've got these huge goals that we're pushing toward. And sometimes you have to narrow it in, bring it back to what can I control today? Because if we're trying to change things that we absolutely have no influence over or no control over, that's frustration for everyone. And those are the kinds of things that contribute to burnout. So the ability to really narrow down and focus on what can I control, what can I influence right now that moves us forward. So that maybe instead of looking at how to leap tall buildings in a single bound, I'm thinking about what are the various steps that take me to the top of that building.
Yeah. I just as I'm thinking about what you were saying, I just last week, I think it was last week, the weeks just kind of roll into each other now. Last week, I had to send, I was having a conversation with a client, and I literally sent them I'm sure you've seen that diagram where it's that circle, the smaller circle, what you can control. Outside of it is what you can influence. And then outside of that is what's outside of your control. And really I literally just did what you said, helping them focus in on what's in your control and what's in your influence. And anything outside of your control, it's outside of your control. And I just feel like the more we're inundated with information of what's going on, like it really, if you look at it, most of that stuff is outside of our control. But I know the hearts of leaders, and that's leaders in organizations, entrepreneurs. Like you don't want to tune out, if you will, or turn a deaf ear to what's happening outside of you. But there, I feel like, to your point, there's this balance of, yes, you can be aware, but you stay focused on what you can actually influence or control.
Yes. And if, for example, if I'm concerned as a leader about, bigger issues and interactions between people, I can speak to how I feel about those or my perspective on them. At the same time, if I'm not interacting in a positive way with people, if I'm not appreciating the people lower down in the organization, if I'm not listening to them to hear what their concerns or their ideas are, then I'm kind of missing the point, because we can we can think globally and act locally, and even though that has become kind of a trite phrase, it really is, it's very real, and you can have an incredible impact even if it's just one or a handful of people at a time.
I love that. Think globally, act locally. I have not heard that. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, you know the drill here with this blitz session. So, 3 questions, 2 minutes. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, awesome. All right. So, knowing what you know today, everything that you've experienced, all the people that you've supported and you've helped and what you've seen, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and give her a piece of advice, what might that be?
Be more human and less professional, whatever professional is in quotes.
Okay. Okay. And looking ahead, as you continue to make an impact, you continue to plow through, and move through this momentum that we have in terms of supporting other leaders, and women, of course. When you are looking back on your life, what do you want the narrative to be?
Oh wow. I want to make sure that I made the world a better place, and in particular, I may have mentioned to you before that I have 6 grandkids, 5 of whom are girls. And the youngest is just turned 1 a couple of months ago, and the oldest just recently turned 9. I want I want to contribute to creating a world where they can be strong, confident women. And I want to include them, or influence them to be the kind of women who have the opportunity to pursue their dreams and speak their piece and accomplish great things. And that's really important to me.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to break my rule here and just ask, just because I think it's relevant. When it comes to supporting, because I feel like there are grown women who need that support of coming into that awareness or that acceptance that they are strong and confident women. So, what are some practical things that you're putting in place with your granddaughters that maybe, those of us stages as well?
Well, I'm actually practicing some of my coaching with them. So, encouraging them to stay curious. I mean, kids are naturally curious, and I want them to, these are, they're bright little girls. And so they're really getting into school. And, it's like, hey, I aced another spelling test kind of thing. And that's awesome. And I want to encourage that. At the same time, I don't want them to fall into the trap of, I have to have the answer, and instead be open and curious and continue to learn and grow, because I think that will not only increase their relationships and their connection with other people, I think it will also increase their confidence.
Yeah. 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 And something you said before too, with regards to, being willing to ask for opportunities in your at your former employer. I think that that's another piece to help us build confidence, because I don't know about you, like, it's taken me a while, and there are still times where, like, I'm afraid of asking. I've learned how to push past it, but, I think about how much of opportunity or how much opportunities we've missed out on for the fear, of asking, and really not even the fear of asking, the fear of hearing no, or the fear of
Yeah.
being judged, or the fear of being perceived a certain way. Like, we've made up these stories of what asking would result in. So I think, the more that we can encourage young women, little girls, grown women, to just ask more. Ask for what you want. There's this saying, a closed mouth don't get fed. And I use it all the time. Like, that's what I have to remind myself, that, it's okay to ask. It's okay to ask. So I think, to your point, between, being curious, right? And that still falls along the lines with asking questions, but also ask for what you want.
Yeah.
Ask for what you want, because people can't come alongside you and help you or open doors for you if they don't know what it is that you want. And, as much as we'd like to believe, and no one's a mind reader.
Well, unfortunately, that's true. No one is a mind reader. But also, I want to add, being aware of when you hear that voice that says, well, who do you think you are to be interested in that? Whatever. It's like, try to get to the bottom of where's that coming from? Because so often we listen to that voice more than we listen to others around us who are actually encouraging us, saying, you should go for that. Give that a try. I mean, we know that men are more likely to apply for a job when maybe they're 10% qualified, and women are more likely, if they're not 100% or 110% qualified, they'll talk themselves out of it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really want to encourage in certainly my granddaughters, but also some of I mentor some college students, some of the young women that I know who are early in their careers, to really encourage them to, it's like, put your neck out there. It's okay to get kind of whacked every once in a while. And so you retreat. What do you learn from it? Because you have to take some risks in order to advance. And so supporting women in being
Absolutely.
brave and taking smart risk and calculated risk, and knowing when you also have allies who will back you up. So you're not the only one saying, hey, I'm interested in that. And then you've got others going, yeah, she would be really good. We should give her that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that you said with regards to the, putting yourself out there. I think, and having other people say, yeah, you should totally do it. I think that that's the power of what we do, right? We are, in essence, that cheerleader, that encourager, and that motivator that says, hey, yes, go ahead and do that. Yes, we will help you, dig out what's stopping you, of course, but it's important to have that. And I think that that's, the work that you do, the work that I do, where, community really, really matters. And I don't know that I can say that I really had community in the earlier part of my career. Like, I probably not until I stepped into entrepreneurship that I realized the importance of building community and surrounding myself with people who will reflect the real me back to me when I couldn't see that. So, for those of you who are listening, if you have not connected with a group of women, or, peers, whatever the case may be, I strongly encourage you to do so. That saying that it's lonely at the top, well, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be if you don't want it to be. And we also know that, no one is self-made. Everyone has a team of supporters around them. So if you are in a space where you're looking to advance, or maybe your confidence isn't where it needs to be and you need that mirror, right? Get around other people who either inspire you or reflect back to you who you really are. So with that, I'm gonna go back on screen here, or not screen, but script, and ask, is, in terms of books. Obviously, we've talked about two amazing books today, but are there any other books that you would recommend?
Actually, there's two. So one I have recently read. Well, actually, it was earlier this year, called "Plays Well with Others" by Eric Barker. It's
Okay.
a wonderful, well-researched book that kind of questions a lot of the things we have been taught or assume about relationships. So I enjoyed it very much. I have just started another book that promises to be quite interesting, and it's called Young and Restless: The Girls Who Sparked America's Revolutions by Maddie Kahn. And so I'm just into the first chapter or so, but it's like I cannot wait for a little more reading time over the holiday to dig into this, because this is going to be the history you wish that they had taught you in school, with all the both girls and young women who have contributed to and changed society and the world.
Oh, I love that. All right, I will add both of those to the show notes. For those of you, if you are watching live, be sure to grab that. I won't link it in the chat thing here because it comes out pretty weird. But if you are listening on the podcast, it will be on the show notes along with Phyllis's book, the link to purchase that, as well as the link to purchase Leadership Reloaded. And with that, Phyllis, for those who are listening or watching, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to connect, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Okay, you can always find me via the website, which is sarkariagroup.com. And my email address is phyllis@sarkariagroup.com. I would love to hear from anyone in terms of the challenges that they're running into, or just actually, even more importantly, the successes they're having. Those are always worth celebrating.
I love that. I love that. So we will include your contact information in the link as well. And I know you're active on LinkedIn, so we'll include your LinkedIn as well. With that, I know at the time of this recording or when it gets released, it'll be beyond Thanksgiving. But just want to wish you and everyone who are watching live or who will watch the replay a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. I know that this time of year is joyous for some, and sometimes it's sad for others. So I recognize both houses, if you will. So just know that I'm just speaking grace over you, whatever camp you're in, for this holiday season, and I look forward to being back next week. Actually, this is it. This is it for this series, but I will be back with another live series. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will talk soon. Take care.
Thanks so much.